Welcome back to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The first of several documentaries about the 2008 presidential election is about to be released. How Obama Got Elected is the work of filmmaker John Ziegler, a former conservative radio talk show host. He has already posted interview excerpts of Alaska Governor Sarah Palin blasting the media and accusing the press of a double standard. John Ziegler joins us now from Los Angeles. And John, let's start with a clip from your film. Here's Sarah Palin talking about her disastrous interview with Katie Couric. Watch.
I knew it didn't go well the first day, and then we gave her a couple of other segments after that. And my question to the campaign was, after it didn't go well the first day, why were we going to go back for more? And because of however it works in you know, that upper echelon of power brokering in the media and with spokespersons, and it was told me that, yeah, we were going to go back for more. And going back for more was not a wise decision.
John, did Sarah Palin ever take responsibility herself for that interview? I mean, I've been poring over the transcript all afternoon, and I don't see it.
See what exactly, David? I mean, I'm glad to see that you finally did some homework, because our first encounter was rife with errors, as was your tease into this particular interview. Sarah Palin never blames the media for the loss. You might want to take a look at the transcript of the interview for that.
Let's set something up here right at the start, John. Let's set something right up here at the start. Do you acknowledge that you were not a fair and objective observer of Sarah Palin? Do you acknowledge that, right?
I'm not sure what your definition of fair and objective is, because obviously MSNBC has a monopoly on fair and objective when it comes to politics. Maybe you should teach me about what fair and objective is.
Here's something that you wrote. Here's an editorial you wrote. You wrote, quote, I admit to being a fan of Sarah Palin from before she was ever named John McCain's vice presidential candidate. The media assassination of her character, and her family was one of the greatest public injustices of our time. One of the greatest public injustices? In my view, that was segregation. How can you possibly put Sarah Palin's treatment by the media alongside segregation?
Oh, that's exactly what I did, David. Well done. By the way, before we move on, could you
called it one of the greatest
come forward with your admiration for Barack Obama? Look,
it is.
You were the one who called it. This was a character assassination perpetrated by the news media, and this network was right at the forefront of that character assassination of this woman. And we will prove it in my movie, Media Malpractice, and go to howobamagotElected.com to find out more information about the film. Well,
let's talk about character assassination. Here are the list of Republicans who said that Sarah Palin was not qualified. David Brooks, George Will, Kathleen Parker, Senator Chuck Hagel, David Frum, Charles Krauthammer, Colin Powell, Ken Duberstein. You want us to believe that all of them are wrong and you are right.
Well, first of all, I would suggest that one of the more insidious elements of the news media is that when a Republican starts to criticize another Republican, all of a sudden they get booked on every TV show they want to get booked on. And so that's a very enticing situation there. It's almost a siren song. And I think it's remarkable that more Republicans didn't jump on that bandwagon in order to get booked on Meet the Press or whatever other TV show they wanted to be on. So that's the way this thing works. If it was a plea for attention,
but why don't you answer the question? You're right, and all of these Republicans are wrong. Is that it?
I think that people can differ over a lot of different things, and I have an opinion. They have theirs. I think the facts bear me out, and I think my film will prove that.
All right, well, here's what some of them said about specific reasons why she was not qualified. David Brooks said she hasn't engaged in national issues. Chuck Hagel, she doesn't have any foreign policy credentials. Hagel also said she got her passport for the first time last year. Parker, there's not much content there. If BS were currency, she would bail out Wall Street herself. You fell for that BS, didn't you?
David, I'm a little confused. David, could you help me for something? Were those quotes about Sarah Palin or Barack Obama? Other than the passport, I'm not sure which ones go with Palin and which one go with Obama.
John, you can try to avoid it. We're talking about Sarah Palin. I mean, we've been looking through this transcript all day long. At any point, did you ever ask her, do you take any responsibility for some of these stumbles? Did you ever ask her that?
First of all, if you'd done your homework, which you didn't the first time, apparently you didn't for the second interview.
I've done the homework. I watched the clips before, and I'd be rereading the transcript all afternoon.
Do you want an answer?
Do you want an answer? Go ahead. I'll give you time.
Do you want an answer? David, do you want an answer, or do you just want to keep talking? All right.
I'm waiting.
The YouTube video at HowObamaGotElected.com is just over 9 minutes. The interview I did with Sarah Palin is 50 minutes long. You ain't seen nothing yet with regard to the real content of this interview.
Great point.
And you won't until my film comes out in late February.
All right. So why don't you just say, oh, no, she did take responsibility, but we just didn't feel the need to have to show it in the 8 minutes that we released to the media?
Well, there are times in which take responsibility for what exactly, David? Why don't you give me an example of what it is she's supposed to be taking responsibility for?
Take responsibility for not being able to answer the question to Katie Couric. Take responsibility for not understanding some of the
See, if you had watched the YouTube video, you would have the explanation on that. But apparently you either didn't watch it or watched it with such a partisan view that you weren't able to see clearly. So, I mean, if you
John,
don't understand that, I can't answer your questions for you, David.
We've been looking at the YouTube clips. We've been looking at the transcripts.
She tells you what she reads. She tells you what she reads in the YouTube clip.
She says USA Today and New York Times. The New York Times. Right, she says that.
Oh, so I'm glad you did do your homework now, finally. That's great.
All right, but did you ask her if she could name what the front page story was today? I mean, did you actually try to figure out, or did you just take her word for everything in this documentary?
Yeah, I'm going to use precious time in a 50-minute interview about an entire election campaign on what the front page story of the New York Times was that particular day. You may obsess about such details that are irrelevant, except for the media elite in New York and Washington.
When you're doing a documentary,
thank goodness for that.
When you're doing a documentary, when you're evaluating the credibility of someone because you're going to spend a lot of time doing a documentary or a news story, isn't it important to at least try to test their credibility as opposed to just being taken in by their wonderful personality?
You will have to see the entire interview. This was a tough interview for Sarah Palin because there were things that she was hit with that she had never seen before, and at times she got emotional. At times she got a little bit upset. She sturdied herself, and I thought handled herself in an excellent fashion. And I think people who look at it in an objective way, in other words, those that don't work for MSNBC, will see it exactly that way once the entire interview is made available late in February with this film, Media Malpractice.
I'll give you an easy question now.
And Palin was smeared.
I'll give you an easy question now.
Don't give me an easy one. Give me a hard one. Come on, hit me, David.
Here's some of the pre-election polls. A poll taken in September about whether Sarah Palin, before the infamous Katie Couric interview, 49% of voters said Palin was not qualified to be president if necessary. Were all of those voters wrong?
That's for history to decide. I think my film will determine that they were wrong, but mostly what it will determine is that the media coverage was completely unfair of Sarah Palin. And by the way, I would urge you to take a look at similar numbers and polls about Barack Obama's qualification to be president, which for some reason this network and others never seemed all that interested in.
No, we looked at all those polls, and the fact of the matter is Sarah Palin's negatives versus positives were the highest of any vice presidential running mate in U.S. history. But in any case, John, we look forward to seeing your film.
And MSNBC is to be congratulated for helping doing that.
Absolutely. We congratulate ourselves for helping you. We think everybody, even if they've already made up their mind about Sarah Palin, should see this documentary, read as much as you can, make your own decision. We thank you for coming on again for a second time today, John. Good of you to join us today.
Hey, anytime, David. I'm glad you had the courage. I'm sure Matthews and Oberman never would.
Well, actually, they would, but that's a whole other debate.